You may have heard recent political debates about gender identity and transgender rights, specifically regarding gendered bathrooms, gendered sports teams, and what's allowed to be taught in schools. But despite the public opinion around transgender people slowly becoming more positive, 2021 was the deadliest year on record for trans people, with 50 trans and gender nonconforming individuals being killed in the United States alone, topping 2020's record of 44 trans murders. A Nationscape survey from the same year shows that 68% of Americans believe that there are only two gender identities, man and woman. Even among Democrats, that number is 52%. With trans violence on the rise every year, it is well past time to understand that these gender identities aren't new or freakish or breaking down the traditional ideas of gender. They have existed for hundreds, if not thousands of years in cultures across the planet. I may not be a historian, but I happen to be one of those people who identifies outside the binary of man or woman. So I intend to inform you about some of the gender identities that have existed throughout history, specifically in ancient Jerusalem, Native America, Native Hawaii, and in India. In ancient Jerusalem, rabbis accepted 6 genders that weren't man or woman. The Talmud, an ancient Jewish religious text that dates back as far as the year 200 CE, lists 8 genders. Zakar, meaning male, and Nekeva, being female, are simply the top of the list. And Noliet Adam and Saris Adam each respectively refer to someone who was born female and became male through human intervention, and someone who was born male and became female through human intervention. They would be called trans men and women today. And Nolia Tama, someone who was assigned female at birth and grew male characteristics naturally, or its counterpart, Saris Tama, someone who was born male and grew female characteristics naturally, would both be called intersex today. But the identities that truly lie outside the spectrum are tumtum, someone with no sexual characteristics, and androgynous, someone with both male and female characteristics. Androgynous is referenced over 200 times in the Talmud. Androgynous people had equal rights to other Jewish citizens and could even marry. It is still a recognized identity in Jewish culture today. Meanwhile, across the Atlantic in Native America, long before the founding fathers or the Mayflower, Native Americans and Native Hawaiians accepted gender identities that were outside of just man or woman. In one of the earliest references to this is in 1825, when an explorer named Trowbridge encountered some Two-Spirit Native Americans. Two-Spirit refers to someone that has both a male and female spirit. They traditionally looked something like this. They had special ceremonial roles in tribal society, could play the parts of men or women in different ceremonies, and were especially valued in Cherokee tribes. Meanwhile, in Hawaii, mahu refers to a number of identities that are neither heterosexual nor cisgender, but especially people assigned male who adopt women's clothing, mannerisms, and play roles that were traditionally assigned to women. Mahu has become a slur used towards gay and transgender Hawaiians due to the sexualization of the identity and the influence of Christian sexual morality on Hawaiian society post-colonization. In other Polynesian cultures, like in Tahiti, Mahu people are generally more accepted and treated better than they are in Hawaii. Mahu and Two-Spirit identities are gender identities that are very specific to a regional culture. Another one of these identities are the Hijras of India. Hijras are people who self-identify as a third gender that operates separately from the imposed man or woman of Indian society. They received legal status recently in 2014, allowing people to neither identify as man or woman on legal documents. Some of the earliest references to Hijras come from them being servants to the noble elite in the 13th century. Many of the people who identify as Hijra were assigned male at birth and wear feminine clothing and have feminine mannerisms. But despite their recent acceptance, their stigmatization and low status in Indian society makes it difficult for them to gain employment outside of prostitution. The association with Hijras and prostitution has further stigmatized and sexualized the identity. During the British occupation of India, the misunderstanding of the Hijra identity and homophobic laws sought to eradicate them from Indian society. There are a number of different gender identities from different cultures across the globe. So many, I don't have time to list them all here. They have different traditions, different roles in society, different languages and terminology for their identities. And they come from a range of nationalities and ethnicities. But there is one thing that we all have in common. The only thing that's truly on the trans agenda. Stop killing us. Stop looking at what you don't understand and seeing it as a threat to your worldview that needs to be eliminated. These gender identities are not some new gay fad that is gripping the youth. They have existed for hundreds, if not thousands of years. These identities existed long before we were born, and they will continue to exist long after we are gone. My sources include Burja, Carlyle, Schneiderman, Smithers, Waltman, and Zancolini. Are there any questions? The questions I received, the first one is, isn't being transgender a mental illness? No. No, it isn't, and that is extremely offensive to ask someone who is trans just for future reference. The DSM hasn't identified being trans as a mental illness for a number of years. Some people who don't identify as man or woman might experience gender dysphoria, but that isn't a mental illness. It is a specific type of distress that comes from your body being incongruent with your gender identity. The second question I received is, what is the oldest concept of a third gender? The oldest thing that I found in my research was an ancient Greek myth of Hermaphroditus. Hermaphroditus was the child of Aphrodite and Hermes, who was a being that was both male and female. Legends refer to Hermaphroditus blessing and protecting brides and overseeing marriages. There are even some legends that refer to them divining the future. Thank you.